such interesting situations in Pittsburgh and Chicago in the sense that they have these legacy veterans who have been forefronts of Stanley Cup championship winning teams. And ultimately, they should really be able to go out on their own terms. But like, what do you do if you're the GM of those franchises and you're trying to just, move to the transition to another phase of your franchise's history? And in particular in Chicago, between Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, who on the ice, strictly speaking, they have meant a lot to the team in terms of the championships that they've won. Like, what do you do if you're Kyle Davidson? It's a good question.
Well, and it's sort of different situations. I mean, those are teams
Yes.
that competed. They were two of the best teams in the exact same era. They each won 3 cups kind of over that era. But, Chicago's been adrift for a few seasons now where they haven't really been in the playoff mix at all. I know they played in the bubble and beat Edmonton there in 2020 and the expanded playoffs, but they really haven't been a playoff team of consequence for 5 or 6 years. Pittsburgh still, like, even this year, to me, they're like defying gravity again. Mark Donk and the like, carrying the Penguins to glory. But, even Sidney Crosby, if you look, he had a slow start to the season. He had a wrist surgery, in September. But like what he's played the last 3 months, he's scoring like crazy, putting up points like crazy. Like they never fall off the Penguins. And so it's a little different because I think it's easier in Pittsburgh in a sense to try to extend this window as long as they can. That being said, Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang are both pending unrestricted free agents. So, if you're going to keep the band together, you've got to sign those players and sort of figure out how to navigate that. Chicago, I think there's more of a case to really tear it down because of, the recent lack of success. And, someone like Patrick Kane, again, continues to be extremely productive player. I'm sure there are contenders out there that would love to have him, especially if Chicago ate some salary to make that cap hit a little easier to digest. But, I do think it'll rest with those guys. I have to imagine one of that group plays somewhere else. Like one of, just for fun, Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Kane, and Toews. Like one of those players, like I would be surprised if all 5 of them retire either as full-time Penguins or full-time Blackhawks. Like I would think, I just don't know yet who's moving on. I mean, I think if we rank them, I think Crosby is probably the least likely to play anywhere else. I really believe he'll spend his whole career in Pittsburgh, but who knows? I mean, things change quickly in pro sports sometimes. And, especially with an athlete, like you just have so few years to chase championships or to do that. I mean, we've seen a number of guys move around the league late in their career after being sort of associated with one franchise. And so I'd be surprised if they all retired where they've been, but I don't yet know who's going to move on and when and how and all the circumstances of that.
One guy who I was actually thinking about yesterday and their future and the possibility of them moving on elsewhere is Chris Letang or Letang, depending on which part of the country of Canada you may be from. I thought for a little bit, I was like, if the Canadians are actually supposed to be aggressive in free agency, what's it going to cost to bring back I think 34-year-old Chris Letang or Letang back to Montreal? And then apparently that day he said he's heard that noise in his ears of going back to Montreal for years. So I feel like he tried to shut that down a little bit, but he would have been my pick for the most likely of some of the players you mentioned to leave their current team to play for another one.
Yeah, well, look, his agent was Kent Hughes throughout his career, the new general manager in Montreal. So, I mean, I think it's natural to draw that link. Chris Letang, someone too, that his name's been in trade rumors at various points in his career. Like, he hasn't been a certain 100% Penguin the whole time. Evgeny Malkin way back, actually, there was some trade rumors around him. So, anything's possible. Like lots of great players. The Steve Yzermans are rare, I guess, or the Nicholas Lidstroms, players that play only for one team. And so the money might be better somewhere else for Chris Letang, or maybe even the term on a contract given his age. And maybe he's wondering about playing at home. I have trouble criticizing that with any player, no matter where they're from. I mean, family considerations, maybe the team he grew up cheering for, like all that stuff. It's what brought John Tavares partially back to Toronto. It's kind of nice, I think, for players to try something new. So yeah, we'll see how these go. I mean, Pittsburgh's hoping to go on a playoff run here. I think they'd like to add players if they could. But Chicago's, it's a little different circumstance. You basically have to ask Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, do you care about the chance to win another Stanley Cup? Because I don't think that they can promise those players, while they're still active players, that they'll have a team even good enough to compete for that. So it's really, are you fine just being a good mentor and seeing this through, or do you want one more chance? And, maybe after winning 3, they'll say that's enough. But, winning gets addictive, right? Winning is, there's such competitive guys too. I wouldn't begrudge them, I guess, if they wanted to chase a championship somewhere else.
I want to move on to one final topic before we get to stick taps. There was not really a report, but when we've talked about women's hockey on this podcast before, we know a best on best league is what is needed for the game, for the sport, just for everyone who's a fan of hockey to enjoy when it comes to women's players. Again, the conversation was brought up. I believe Chris Botta, who I think might have discussed it on a podcast, the possibility of that coming back. I've seen fellow scribes, Marissa and Jemmy, say, hey, I talked about this early on in February. I think Haley Salvian's also kind of talked about this on her platform as well. There has been talk about this for quite some time. And once again, we're back at this well saying, hey, when's this going to happen? Is this going to be soon? CJ, I'm not sure what you know, but I'd like to know what you know. And I'd also like to get into a discussion about what you think a women's league needs for it to be truly successful.
Well, I think, what's happening is conversations have advanced beyond where they've been in the past in terms of seeing this through with the PWHPA and some NHL teams and sponsors about kind of creating teams that are affiliated with the NHL teams that could form some kind of league. And, by no stretch of the imagination is this done, but it does seem as though there's been genuine progress there. And that's where some of this hope comes through. And really, it's clear to me what you need for a league. You need a league that pays the players living wages, where they don't have to have other jobs if they don't choose to, and they can train and focus full time on being professional hockey players and being, on their craft that way. And, give the PHF credit, because it's still a league that's given women a chance to play and to compete against each other and get paid. But it's still not at a point, even with the recent announcement of bumping the salary cap, where, the players aren't making enough to live on it, quite frankly, without other subsidies or other jobs, other forms of income to support them. And so, I think that it makes the most sense to have a league either directly affiliated with the NHL or even just teams affiliated with NHL teams. You can share resources, you can play in those arenas, you can, I think, market to your fan base. It makes a lot of sense from a high level standpoint. And I think it's the model that will most likely to bring success. I mean, we've seen it in the WNBA, and that league's growing too. I know that they've come out, there's still issues there. I mean, look at this. This isn't like a wave the magic wand and you say, oh, the league's formed, every problem solved. Like, this is still going to be a journey. But what's encouraging is it sounds like that journey might produce some breakthroughs here. And, look, the Canadian and U.S. women's teams are going to reprise the Beijing gold medal game in Pittsburgh next week, March 12th. I think that there's a springboard here to build off the strong TV audiences the games in Beijing produced, the momentum from that, hopefully the momentum from next week's game. And so, yeah, I think we're going to see some announcements here in the relatively near future, and we've got to kind of see where it goes. But, you have to like that it's at least getting to the point where this is coming to fruition and a league can start to get off the ground. But, as I say, I think it will still be a building process as you go. It's not just like if you build it, they will come. I mean, it's still going to require support, and hopefully we can support it on our channels, Julian, when it does happen, and talk about it. And
absolutely.
Yeah, but I do think it's going to happen. I think there's going to be some teams launched that are affiliated with NHL teams, and I think that would be a great place to start.